and the Supreme Court has not been receiving the adequate oversight necessary in order to preserve their own legitimacy.
Coming up next on Scripps News Live, the Supreme Court wrapping up its most recent term, but the new rounds of decisions causing a divide inside the increasing polarization of the court and the calls to add more justices to the bench right now.
We are doing everything in our power to ensure that the horrific violence that occurred this weekend is not repeated.
The Baltimore mayor promising action after a deadly mass shooting, the latest after a violent weekend in that city and others across the nation.
It is a form of necessary transportation when you're far away from the urban centers.
And a busy few days for airports nationwide. Why small towns are feeling cut off as major airlines end services for some rural stops. Scripps News Live begins right now. Hey there, welcome to Scripps News Live. Great to see you on this Monday. I'm Veronica Cruz. The Supreme Court now done with its latest term after delivering some of its most consequential decisions yet. Just in its final 2 days, the court ending affirmative action for college admissions, blocking the president's student loan debt forgiveness plan, and siding with a Colorado web designer in a case pitting LGBTQ+ rights against religious beliefs. All of that coming a year after justices overturned Roe v. Wade. Now, all of these decisions have left Americans divided. A new ABC Ipsos poll found that 53% of Americans think Supreme Court justices rule mainly on the basis of their partisan political views. And that is up 10 points from the same poll in January 2022. The Supreme Court has become more politically polarized over the past 20 years, and it's all according to an analysis by the website 538. The 3 liberal justices all nominated by Democratic presidents, the 6 conservatives nominated by Republicans. Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed joining us now live from Washington. Nate, what are Americans saying? How confident are they in the work of the Supreme Court right now?
Well, not too confident. I want to point you to some of the most recent polls about the Supreme Court. This first poll was taken before some of these latest key decisions came out. It is Americans' confidence in the Supreme Court. It's a YouGov Economist poll. Just 10% of Americans strongly approve of the work that the Supreme Court is doing. 26% somewhat approve, 20% somewhat disapprove, and 30% strongly disapprove of the work that the court's doing. Just 12% are unsure. So as you can see, there are just 10% of Americans saying that they are strongly in approval of what one of the 3 branches of government has been doing. I want to point you in the direction of another poll which came out just in the days following some of these recent Supreme Court decisions, including the ones on determining race as a factor in college admissions, student loan forgiveness, and allowing a website designer to deny service to same-sex couples seeking a wedding website. 52% of Americans agree with that decision on using race in college admissions, eliminating affirmative action. 45% agree with the ruling on striking down President Biden's student loan forgiveness program. And just 43% of Americans, just almost tied with the 42% that disagree with the ruling, agree that a website designer should be able to deny services to same-sex customers seeking a wedding website. Now, a lot of this anger over the Supreme Court recent rulings likely to just continue to take a toll as you see that very low number of Americans from that poll at the beginning of the month had confidence in the Supreme Court. Certainly, these most recent decisions likely are going to have some sort of impact on that.
Yeah, that's right. And these are 3 impactful and monumental decisions as well. Has fallout largely followed party lines, Nate?
In many ways it has. I want to steer you to comments this weekend from Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a progressive Democrat who is extremely upset about the court's latest rulings. She has been one of the voices in Congress who's been calling for President Biden to expand the number of members of the Supreme Court to even out the conservative liberal tilt. Take a listen.
We have a broad level of tools to deal with misconduct, overreach, and abuse of power. And the Supreme Court has not been receiving the adequate oversight necessary in order to preserve their own legitimacy. And in the process, they themselves have been destroying the legitimacy of the court, which is profoundly dangerous for our entire democracy.
And to Representative Ocasio-Cortez's point on oversight, it's up to the majority party in each House of Congress to provide that oversight. Given that Democrats are in the minority in the House of Representatives, there's not really a whole ton that can be done by Democrats. Republicans, meanwhile, have largely lauded the court's most recent opinions. President Trump and Nikki Haley took credit for some of those decisions this weekend and applauded those 3 recent major decisions by the Supreme Court. Take a listen.
We appointed nearly 300 federal judges and 3 great Supreme Court justices. And this week, those justices ruled to move our country forward.
This was a fantastic win for individual liberty and freedom. I think whether you look at the fact that, first of all, the Democrats are upset because things didn't go their way, but the people won. This is about empowering people and their rights.
So really, with these 3 latest decisions, party line appears to be the name of the game in terms of who approves of these decisions. Democrats largely disapprove of these latest decisions. Republicans largely proponents of the current conservative tilt of the Supreme Court. All of this partisan bickering, though, is at the expense, apparently, of the approval of the Supreme Court. Remember, just that 10% of Americans, according to that YouGov Economist poll, strongly approve of the work that the Supreme Court is doing.
All right, Nate Reed reporting for us this afternoon from Washington. Nate, appreciate it. Thank you so much. So the race for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination is getting decisively messy at the top. Former President Trump might have a massive lead in the polls right now, but Florida Governor Ron DeSantis started a new type of attack on the frontrunner. The DeSantis campaign sharing a video over the weekend attacking Trump for his past support of the LGBTQ+ community.
I will do everything in my power to protect our LGBTQ citizens. But Caitlyn Jenner would have
DeSantis has signed a series of new laws in Florida targeting LGBTQ+ rights. At least 18 other states have done the same. This latest attack ad has members of the community on both sides of the aisle criticizing the governor, accusing the ad of glorifying trans and homophobia. It was a violent weekend across the country as 4th of July celebrations kicked off. Joy quickly turning to fear in Baltimore. A shooting there at a block party left 2 people dead, 28 others injured, about half of them minors. The mayor's office says the city is bringing in support resources to help younger victims address mental health concerns and trauma after that shooting.
The loss of our South Baltimore neighbors is not easy. We know that their families and the community and all of us in this time will face the trauma associated with this event, these losses, these injuries for years to come.
National correspondent Maura Sirianni has been tracking the latest developments in Baltimore for us and other cities that have been reeling from the violence over the weekend.
More communities grappling with gun violence. Celebrations on America's Independence Day weekend marred once again by this type of violence and shootings from the East Coast to the Midwest. So let's start in Baltimore, where you guys mentioned that is the big story from over the weekend. An intense manhunt is underway even now after 2 people were killed and 28 others were wounded in a mass shooting at a block party that's happening overnight Sunday. Police Commissioner Richard Worley confirms an 18-year-old woman and a 20-year-old man are among the dead, victims ranging in age from just 13 years old to 32, with most being teenagers. Police say they are searching for more than one shooter, but here's what officials in Baltimore had to say about the gun violence epidemic.
This tragic incident is another glaring, unfortunate example of the deep issues of violence in Baltimore, in Maryland, in this country, and particularly gun violence and the access to illegal guns.
This is a societal problem that we're dealing with, a mass shooting where a disagreement turns into 28 people shot.
We mentioned other communities on edge. In Wichita, Kansas, 7 people were wounded after a person walked into a nightclub there with a gun and opened fire, leading to widespread panic. As you can imagine, a lot of chaos. No one has died, but police said at least 2 others were injured as they were trying to escape the gunfire. They were trampled as they tried to get out of that venue as quickly as possible. The Gun Violence Archive this morning reporting 340 mass shootings in America this year. It is only the beginning of July. A mass shooting, again, is defined as an incident with 4 victims, not including the shooter. And police in Chicago said more than 30 people have been shot in that city since Friday.
And people in that state already with heavy hearts. These latest shootings come
just days before the one-year mark for the mass shooting during a 4th of July parade in Highland Park, where 7 people were killed and 48 others were wounded. Mara Siriani, Scripps News.
And coming up tonight on The Debrief, our Dell Walters will continue our coverage on the mass shooting in Baltimore. He'll host a special half hour featuring our correspondents on the ground, following all the latest developments. Again, that's ahead at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on Scripps News. Now to Colorado. Denver police trying to stem the flow of illegal guns on the city's streets. Law enforcement has recovered more than 1,000 illegal firearms so far this year. They say more than 260 of them were stolen from cars. And many of them, officials say, have been used to commit other crimes.
There are far too many guns in our community, far too many individuals that feel emboldened to use them during the daylight, in large crowds, even very near where police officers are known to be.
Cars are the #1 target for gun theft, according to Everytown for Gun Safety. Gun experts recommend gun owners bring their guns inside their homes and safely store them. And if you're someplace that they aren't allowed, get a lockbox for your vehicle. Still to come on Scripps News Live, a traditionally blue state could impact who becomes the Republican presidential nominee. What's behind that shift in our next half hour? And protests in France now starting to ease. A week after a teenager is shot to death by police. We'll have an update from Paris after a quick break.
Attention all seniors. You can now get up to $50,000 for your funeral and other final expenses, including your credit card debt, with no medical exam, starting at less than $1 a day.
Oh, honey, your dad and I can't stop talking about this baby that's coming.
We've also been thinking a lot about our future, and no matter what, we want to make sure we aren't leaving you and your family with any of our debts.
Just last week, we read that the price of a funeral can be $8,000 or more.
Wow, Jeff and I definitely would not have the money to pay for that.
And that's just a funeral. But you don't have to worry. We called, and with one phone call, we were eligible for $50,000 for our funeral and final expenses.
Well, that's great, but don't you need to take a medical exam to qualify? You and Mom have some health issues.
No. There's no medical exam, and we were able to get coverage right over the phone.
And our rates can never be increased, our benefits can never be decreased, and our coverage can never be canceled.
I'm so glad you made that call.
Don't leave loved ones with your debt. Call 800-293-5789 now and see if you qualify for up to $50,000 for your funeral and other final expenses, starting at less than $1 a day. There's no medical exam, and you can be approved even if you have pre-existing health conditions. Your rates can never be increased, your benefits can never be decreased, and your coverage can never be canceled. There's no obligation. Call 800-293-5789 now. There's no paperwork, no hidden fees, and no waiting periods. And you can start coverage right over the phone, starting at less than $1 a day. Call 800-293-5789. That's 800-293-5789. 800-293-5789.
My little family is me, Aria, and Jade. Just the 3 of us girls. Look here, this way. I never thought twice about feeding her kibble, but about 2 years ago, I realized she was overweight. She was always out of breath. That's when I decided to introduce the farmer's dog to her diet. It's just so fresh that she literally gets bubbles in her mouth. Now she's a lot more active. She's able to join us on our adventures, and we're all able to do things as a family.
Get started at betterforthem.com.
This is Wise. 40 currencies, 170 countries, one account to take on the world. Take on Rio. Take on Rome. Take on work. And take on play. Take on this, and this, and spend, send, receive. Here, there, everywhere. Download the Wise app today.
After nearly a week, unrest in France seems to be easing up. French authorities have been trying to quell a rash of protests that have been breaking out following the fatal police shooting of a 17-year-old of Algerian descent. So far, French officials say more than 3,300 people have been arrested. International correspondent Ross Cullen has been on the ground in Paris for us. He has the details.
Well, on Monday, we saw a lot of demonstrations in Paris and other French cities in support of mayors. The leader of the Paris City Council, Anne Hidalgo, she had a demonstration outside her office on Monday, a counter-protest at which she said she unreservedly condemns the violence. There was also a demonstration in the south of Paris where there was a demonstration in support of a mayor there in his jurisdiction because his house was targeted over the weekend. Somebody stole a car, drove it into the house, set the car on fire, and the mayor's wife broke her leg trying to flee the scene. There is going to be on Tuesday a chance for 200 different mayors to have a word with the president, Emmanuel Macron, holding talks with 200 mayors whose jurisdictions across the country have been particularly hard hit by looting, violence, rioting and arson, or a combination of all four. On Sunday night into Monday morning, we did see a de-escalation in terms of the violence, in terms of the numbers. 200 people were arrested, and that is still a lot, but nothing like the 1,300 people who were detained by police on Friday night. So what the government is hoping going forward this week, as we mark 1 week since Nael, the 17-year-old, was shot dead by police, sparking this whole wave of outrage, what the government is hoping is that there is going to be a continuation, a reduction of the violence, a reduction in the number of incidents, and a reduction also in the intensity of those incidents. Ross Cullen, Scripps News, Paris.
In Israel, Israeli forces launched a deadly attack on Jenin in what a military source calls its largest strike on the occupied West Bank city in more than 2 decades. Palestinian officials have confirmed 8 people dead, more than 50 others injured in that attack. The Israeli Defense Forces said that it was targeting, quote, terrorist infrastructure. The IDF carrying out almost a dozen airstrikes, saying hundreds of Israeli ground troops targeted what they say was a militant command and control center and weapons manufacturing site.
We are striking the terrorism hub with a great strength. I want to emphasize that we don't have a fight with the Palestinians. Actually, our fight is with the proxies of Iran in our region, which is mainly with the Hamas and the Islamic Jihad. Our goal is to focus in Jenin, and our goal is to focus only on the terrorists themselves.
The Palestinian Ministry of Health said 5 of the 8 killed were teenagers. At least 10 people who were injured are hospitalized in serious condition. Well, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen will be visiting Beijing later this week in an effort to improve relations between the United States and China. She'll be arriving on Thursday and she will stay through Sunday. Now, the goal of the trip is to stabilize the global economy and challenge China's relationship with Russia over the war in Ukraine. Yellen won't be taking a meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Secretary of State Antony Blinken visited China last month. Scripps News anchor Lauren Magarino takes a closer look at the growing tension between the United States and China and where this relationship stands right now.
Just as state leaders call for a cooling of tensions between the U.S. and China, it seems the temperature only continues to climb. In mid-June, Secretary of State Antony Blinken visited President Xi Jinping to discuss relations and conflict aversion.
He made clear that while we will compete vigorously, the United States will responsibly manage that competition so that the relationship does not veer into conflict.
But soon after, President Biden made remarks at a campaign reception, saying that President Xi was upset about the spy balloon shot down in February as a, quote, great embarrassment for dictators when they didn't know what happened. The spokesperson for the Chinese Foreign Ministry called the comment extremely absurd and irresponsible. It's still unclear what the impact of the comments will be. The war of words is not the only recent flashpoint between the two superpowers since the high-profile spy balloon incident earlier this year. In April, a federal court in New York brought charges against 2 men allegedly connected to an illegal overseas police station operating in Lower Manhattan. The Department of Justice says it was operated by a provincial branch of the Ministry of Public Security of the People's Republic of China.
Now just imagine the NYPD opening an undeclared secret police station in Beijing. It would be unthinkable.
There are over 100 so-called police stations around the globe, supposedly to intimidate dissidents living abroad. Cities in Canada, Germany, the Netherlands, and others have opened investigations into alleged police outposts. The Spain-based human rights NGO Safeguard Defenders has documented alleged stations across these countries. China has denied these are police outposts and insists they are stations to assist with services like driver's license renewals. In June, to add to security concerns, the Wall Street Journal reported that China was planning to build a new military training facility in Cuba, according to suggestions from U.S. intelligence reports. The Pentagon denied initial reports.
That reporting, I can tell you based on the information that we have, that is not accurate, that we are not aware of China and Cuba developing any type of spy station.
But it has yet to comment on the latest investigation. According to Gallup polling this year, for the third time in a row, Americans are most likely to name China as the greatest adversary of the U.S. over Russia, North Korea, and Iran. A Pew Research Center survey in March showed that the greatest concerns for Americans were specifically the partnership between China and Russia, tensions between China and Taiwan, and the country's record on human rights. As U.S.-China relations continue to be a major concern for many Americans, the Biden administration faces an uphill battle to de-escalate tensions, all while refusing to cede to arguably its greatest economic competitor.
And that was our Lauren Magrino reporting there for us. Coming up next on Scripps News Live, artificial intelligence already making its way into the 2024 White House race. What officials are doing right now to try and regulate this technology. And your 4th of July fireworks show might look a little different this year. We're going to tell you the reason why after a quick break.
The Athletic. Subscribe today.
Window Wear Project helped me find the strength to go further than I ever thought possible.
I was able to come out of my shell and really connect with others.
So I can feel like part of a team, part of the community again.
It's possible to live better.
It's possible to have a voice and to be heard.
To feel understood.
To find peace.
Because I've experienced firsthand that anything is possible.
Hey.
Hey, I'm inside the bank. Where's the $500?
What?
I don't have much time. Where's the $500?
I said drop your bank, not rob your bank.
What?
I said drop your bank and get Dave. The banking app.
Yeah, I thought this was a lot of work for $500.
You think?
I mean, I would love it if you could come get me.
Oh, no. Oh, she going to jail.
Hello?
There's an easier way you can get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less when you download Dave.
When Lila was ready to sell her ring, she sent it to Worthy, where they took care of everything and auctioned it on her terms. Then, Worthy sent Lila her money. You're worthy of more. Get started at worthy.com.
Sure, you'll teach her how to drive a car, then use Greenlight to power her independence with crash detection with 911 dispatch, family location sharing, and emergency SOS alerts. Invest in your best investment with Greenlight.
How can a photo become a vibrant part of your home? When you go to tryfracture.com and print your images directly on glass. Get beautiful depth and clarity on a sleek frameless print that's easy to hang and looks incredible in any space. Go to tryfracture.com now to save 20% on glass prints.
It's so easy. Get out your own way. It's so when you break free.
Easy peasy done.
It's so easy.
It's just so easy.
Sunday nights on In Real Life.
Send for the baby?
Yeah.
Scripps News journalists take you off the grid.
We were just a bunch of kids with a camera.
Stunts have become more specialized.
And to the heart of the story.
When the pandemic hit, the American dream kind of changed.
There were a lot of warning signs. They just didn't care.
In Real Life, Sunday at 8/7 Central, only on Scripps News.
It is an Independence Day staple, fireworks. And sales are expected to blow up again this year, possibly breaking records. And with fireworks flying off the shelves, the American Pyrotechnics Association is reminding everyone to play it safe. At least 11 people were killed in fireworks-related incidents last year. It's all according to the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission. And more than 10,000 people also made a trip to the emergency room. Officials say many of those hurt by fireworks are children. Now, some communities have been moving away from the 4th of July fireworks displays, and instead they're moving to drone celebrations. Colette Bordelin with Scripps News Denver spoke with a drone expert about these changing times.
Got it? The sky's the limit for these heavy boxes. Starting their trip in the dirt. But what's in the boxes is where the work takes off.
Heck yeah, let's talk about some drones.
Thomas Dolan could do that all day.
It gives you a view of the world that you can't get.
His young business, Bright Flight Drone Shows, has dreams of getting hundreds of drones.
All right, I'm gonna hover them.
And these drones really shine at night.
What are the differences between drone shows and fireworks shows?
There's a lot of differences. You know, I certainly don't want to, sit here and say that I don't love fireworks. I love fireworks. We know that there are downsides to fireworks.
He says those include injuries, noise pollution, and negative environmental impacts.
Drones, there's nothing. They are clean. It's a drone, our battery. You put them up, they put on a spectacular show, they come back, you're done.
Dolan admits weather can be problematic for drones, and how much they cost is another barrier.
There's limitations with our time frame. We're anywhere from 12 to 15 minutes is our typical drone show.
What would you say to the people who just don't want to watch a drone show? They want to see a fireworks show.
Just give it a chance.
A chance when Dolan believes drones are the way of the future for the 4th of July.
And that was Colette Bordelin reporting there from Broomfield, Colorado. I'm Veronica Cruz. Thank you so much for joining us. For the audience leaving us right now, your local programming is up next. And don't forget to check us out on scripsnews.com online. If you are staying with us right now, there's much more news headed your way right here on Scripps News Live. After the break, the July 4th holiday already breaking travel records at airports across the country. We're going to have those figures for you straight ahead. And what could we learn from California's mail-in voters? The impact they may have on who becomes the Republican presidential nominee. That's next.
Hi, and welcome everyone watching at home. We're here to remind you that we have agents standing by right now to answer your legal questions. So if you've been injured in an accident that was not your fault, call now. Find out if you have a case and how much is potentially worth. I'm Gina Bellich, here with spokesman and TV personality Tom Mustin. So Tom, tell everyone watching at home who should call right now.
Well, Gina, first off, thank you for having me here in the studio. Now, as far as who should call in, the answer is anyone who's been injured in an accident that was not your fault should give us a call right now. Agents are standing by to answer any questions you may have and tell you how much your case is potentially worth.
Thanks, Tom. So what kind of calls are we seeing today?
Well, Gina, we're getting calls about all types of accidents, but the most common has been car accidents. So if you or someone you know were injured in an accident that was not your fault, take that first step and give us a call. We'll answer your questions and you'll find out if you have a case and how much it's potentially worth.
Thanks, Tom. Call now.
Do you spend hours maintaining your gutters? Save that time with LeafGuard's maintenance-free system. Call 1-833-2-GUTTERS. Mesh filters sit on top of your gutters, building up debris and eventually clogging. Then they need to be cleaned too. Honestly, your home should have been built with LeafGuard gutters. LeafGuard's wraparound hood deflects debris and keeps water away from your home. The one-piece seamless system is strong, 20% thicker than average and built to last. Plus, LeafGuard is guaranteed to never clog for as long as you own your home. Right now, get a complete Leaf Guard system for only $99 down, $99 a month, and $99 installation. You'll also receive a $100 Visa gift card with a free gutter inspection and in-home estimate. Damage from clogged gutters can cost you thousands. Never worry about clogged gutters again. Don't wait, you've still got time. Call 1-833-2-GUTTERS today. That's 1-833-2-GUTTERS.
Let's get you up to date right now on some of our top stories. A shooting at a block party in Baltimore left 2 people dead, more than 24 injured. Police say it happened around 12:30 Sunday morning, with victims ranging in age from 32 to just 13 years old. The mayor says anyone with information should come forward as police continue their search for several suspects. After months of being denied consular access, the U.S. ambassador to Russia met with detained American journalist Evan Gershkovich today in Moscow. The Wall Street Journal reporter is being held on suspicion of espionage. He will be held in detention until at least the end of August. He's facing up to 20 years in prison if found guilty. Tyson Foods, the largest poultry producer in the United States, plans to start giving its chickens antibiotics again. It's reversing a move the company started 8 years ago when they stopped using drugs on its chickens. The change means that Tyson will no longer be able to use its no antibiotics ever line. Hey there, welcome to Scripps News Live. Great to see you today. I'm Veronica Cruz. In just over 7 months from now, California voters will start to get mail-in ballots for the 2024 presidential primary election. For the first time in decades, experts say Deep Blue California could play a huge role in deciding the Republican presidential nominee. Jared Aarons from Scripps News San Diego has the details.
While Republican presidential hopefuls like Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, Mike Pence, and others spent a lot of time this spring in Iowa, it won't be long before they head west.
Clearly, California is what I call the big enchilada.
Yes, California, with its endless supply of blue skies, blue waves, and blue voters, will see red as 2024 heats up.
The California GOP primary in 2024 is going to be a critical point.
In conversations with Scripps News political correspondent Joe St. George, San Diego political analyst John Dadian, and political research analyst John Nienstedt, all three said the same thing. In 2024, California will play a huge role in picking the Republican nominee.
You know, all bets are off, really, I think, in this situation.
The calendar is a big part of this. In 2020, California moved its presidential primary from June to March to have more influence over picking the nominees. This cycle, it falls on March 5th, Super Tuesday, along with 12 other states, including Republican strongholds like Texas, Utah, and other parts of the South. Being that early means California can give a candidate momentum. That's why Nienstedt thinks it would be a mistake for candidates to focus on those red states that day and ignore what he calls one of the primary's biggest fish.
A win here, a good showing here, continues momentum in a delegate-rich sort of sense. So it gives more solidity to a campaign that does well here.
That's because California will send 169 delegates to the Republican National Convention, the most of any state. And instead of basing it on the statewide vote, the winner of each congressional district gets 3 delegates. So a candidate just needs to win a handful of districts to have a good day.
It's going to matter, and it's going to matter who finishes in second place or third place. It could be a moment where you have someone who maybe didn't perform well in Iowa, or maybe they didn't perform well in New Hampshire, have a bit of a comeback. It could be the moment that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis overtakes former President Donald Trump.
Or it could be the day that Trump solidifies his nomination. After all, 6 million people in California voted for him in 2020. That's more than Texas with 5.9 million, more than Florida with 5.7 million. In fact, Trump got more votes in California than any other state in the nation. These numbers show candidates need to win in California to win the GOP.
People forget how big a state California is. I mean, parts of Bakersfield up in central California, you would think you're in the South.
Issues like the Second Amendment matter more in rural parts of California. They'll be talking also about inflation and gas prices. They'll be talking about wokeness as well.
They'll also be talking about money.
Republican presidential candidates will treat it as they've always treated California, which is as an ATM machine.
In just the past week, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, and Ron DeSantis have all held fundraisers in California. More will come to pick up cash and votes.
Of course, Republican candidates are going to be coming to California. Of course, Republican candidates are going to be campaigning in San Diego County simply because they need the Benjamins in order to keep their campaign going.
That's why California, where a Republican hasn't won statewide election since Arnold Schwarzenegger in 2006, will feel the red heat in 2024.
Jared Aarons joins us now live. Jared, thank you so much for being here. I want to go ahead and start with this. How does this impact the way that the candidates are going to be campaigning and where they're going to be campaigning?
I think you'll see them campaigning at a lot of the usual spots, especially where they go in California. Typically, they'll come to San Diego because it's got a strong Republican base. They'll go to some of the Central Valley, places like Bakersfield, places like Tulare County, where they did typically very well in congressional races, in presidential races in the past. But they're also going to spend some time campaigning in some blue areas like San Francisco, like Los Angeles. One, because there's some money there, and as you heard, they need to campaign and fundraise, but also because they know even if there are only a handful of voters that are Republican registered voters in those congressional districts, they can still win that and pick up those delegates.
All right, let's talk about how California has been changing. What would a shift in California from a blue state to a red state do to the overall political landscape?
Well, it's really tough to see a statewide shift happening. I think what you might be seeing is some individual congressional districts or counties get redder while the state gets bluer. There hasn't been a Republican candidate win statewide office here in almost 30 years. 2006 was the last time. I don't see the whole state shifting red that much. But what you're going to see is certain areas that will become redder as people leave some of the bigger cities for some other parts of California. And you'll see that the parts of the state that already are red will start to play a bigger part in California's politics.
Now, we know that Trump had 6 million votes or more than 6 million votes in the state in 2020. What does this all mean for both Biden and Trump as we head into 2024? Who actually won the state in the last election? And what is it going to look like moving forward for the two candidates?
6 million sounds like a huge number, Veronica, but really a lot of that is out of proximity. 6 million out of, I think it was 18 million people that voted back in 2020. So it was still about a 65-35% split. And actually, if you look at over the last 20 or so years, the percentages, not just in presidential races, but in governor's races, the gap has only gotten wider between the statewide presidential or gubernatorial candidate for the Democrats and the Republican one. So I think California still is a blue state, but I think what you're going to see is, especially during the primary, those candidates that want to try and make up some ground on Donald Trump may see a couple of opportunities here, especially if they're looking towards some of those moderate Republican voters, especially if they're looking towards some of those bluer areas that they think maybe I can win the Republican vote in that presidential or congressional district and pick up a few delegates there and shrink Donald Trump's lead coming out of Super Tuesday on March 5th.
And Jared, I wanted to ask you about the state's governor, because California Governor Gavin Newsom was actually here in the South over the weekend, and he was stumping for Biden. But was he really, is the question. What are you hearing right now? Is he going to be throwing his hat in the ring for 2024?
It seems highly unlikely. It's interesting, the things that he's been doing recently, campaigning in the South. He spent some time in Idaho this last week. The back and forth between he and Ron DeSantis are all things that most people would look at and say, oh, he's laying the groundwork for a run. But he hasn't done anything like any of the big nationwide fundraisers or created any super PACs that we know about yet to lay the groundwork for that kind of run. And he sees President Biden still as the incumbent. And it is rare, although there are a few people that are trying to challenge President Biden, it's very rare to see an incumbent president face a serious challenge like what Gavin Newsom would provide. I also am not sure if there is the desire among the Democratic base for him to challenge President Biden just yet.
Yeah, just yet. Just yet is about right. Maybe
Yet
not
is a big deal,
2024.
yeah.
Maybe in the future. Jared Aarons, anchor and reporter with Scripps News San Diego. Jared, thank you so much. Now, as the 2024 campaign heats up, we are seeing signs that this race will bear some differences from what we've seen in the past. Our Deputy Political Director, Joe St. George, has more now on the growing role of artificial intelligence in the race for the White House.
The reality is the 2024 presidential election is going to be different. We haven't had a former president try and get his job back since 1940 and President Herbert Hoover. We haven't had a current president try to win re-election over the age of 80 ever. The election of 2024 will also be different because it's never been easier to produce fake political images. For context, negative ads that stretch the truth aren't new in American politics. The first one is believed to be this one by President Lyndon Johnson, simply known as the Daisy ad, where the late president implies the choice is between him and a candidate who could create nuclear war. Since then, attack ads have only intensified. That commercial, though, as well as every other commercial really since the 1960s, required an actor and actual images to be captured on film. And that's the biggest thing that could change with the 2024 election.
Officials closed the city of San Francisco this morning.
This ad, produced by the Republican National Committee this year, was produced entirely using AI, artificial intelligence. The images are not real, but it is what the GOP calls the country's possible future if President Biden is reelected. The ad does note it in the top left in very small font. It says made entirely with AI imagery. While that ad was meant to attack Democrats, this AI Twitter ad by Ron DeSantis' campaign team is meant to attack former President Trump. You see those pictures of him hugging former White House advisor Dr. Anthony Fauci? That is fake. Twitter labeled it such in response. Those ads, as well as the overall concept of AI, have some in Washington racing to figure out a solution. But so far, there has been little success.
It's a very important topic.
At a recent meeting of the Federal Election Commission, policymakers debated the possibility of implementing new AI rules.
The motion fails 3-3.
The effort, though, did not pass, with policymakers concluding they don't have the authority, at least right now, to address it.
Congress has given us very sharply limited authority.
Congress, though, could address this and encourage the regulation of AI in politics before the 2024 campaign intensifies further. But so far, they have not, although legislation has been introduced, and the Senate is expected to dive deep into the AI debate later this month. For the moment, all of this means that you, the voter, will have to be extra skeptical of campaign commercials in this upcoming presidential election. Joe St. George, Scripps News, Washington.
And straight ahead on Scripps News Live, if you think it's hard to get a flight from a major metro area, imagine living in a remote town.
I'm Chris Conti here in Morrisville, Vermont, where you can see there are not a lot of flights coming and going from this small regional airport. There is a similar story playing out in airports like this all across the country.
In a lot of smaller places, this is how you get around.
It is a form of necessary transportation when you're far away from the urban centers.
We show you how some rural communities are banding together in hopes of convincing Congress to bring commercial airline flights back to their regions.
And we would like to hear from you. You can always give us a call on our Scripps News Viewer hotline. That number is toll-free, 1-833-4-SCRIPPS. Again, that's 1-833-472-7477. Feel free to share your comments and your story ideas.
Are you tired of that old worn-out bath or shower? Now you can have a new one installed in just one day with a new limited-time offer from Jacuzzi Bath Remodel.
We're waiving all installation costs with no interest and no payments for 1 year.
Hi, I'm Art Edmonds. Jacuzzi has been making water feel great for over 65 years. And now you can get a gorgeous custom bath remodel at a price you can afford. And the best part is, they'll install it in as little as 1 day with no stress and no mess.
I've been trying to get him to remodel that bath for years. I called and they did in just 1 day.
And at a price we could afford.
Every time I stepped over my old tub, I worried I might fall. I don't have those fears anymore.
With Jacuzzi, you can get a safer, easy entry shower with features like functional grab bars and a custom seat to keep you feeling comfortable and independent at home. And with no interest and no payments for a year, it's a bathroom remodel you can afford.
Oh my God, I love it!
It's so pretty and new, and the tub is so deep, and I can't wait to just go climb in it and just lay there.
Our designers are standing by to guide you step by step. So call now to get your one-day installation and find out how you can get luxurious upgrades and a lifetime warranty from a brand you know you can trust.
It was done the same day. We did not have to wait.
It's absolutely perfect. It's exactly what I was dreaming of.
Jacuzzi bath remodel did not disappoint.
Your new jacuzzi, bath, or shower is waiting. Now is the best time to call and take advantage of one of Jacuzzi's best offers ever.
We're waiving all installation costs with no interest and no payments for 1 year.
Call or go online to jacuzzibathremodel.com today to take advantage of this limited time offer. Call 800-990-6587. That's 800-990-6587. Call now.
How does Klein Inspector get among the most big verdicts and settlements of any law firm in the country? Because Klein Inspector is an award-winning team with 5 doctor lawyers, the most of any firm in the United States. And that's why the New York Times calls Klein Inspector a powerhouse law firm. So if a defective product, motor vehicle accident, or medical malpractice caused a catastrophic injury, call Klein Inspector.
We're back for $500. Can you take it? Hair from the drain. Salmon, we heard you're allergic.
I can't take it.
Oh, Mimi, you ready?
There's an easier way you can get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less when you download Dave.
Digging deeper into the headlines.
We have some big stories to get to tonight.
Shedding light on groundbreaking investigations and ending your night with something new.
Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Christian Bryant.
Scripps News Tonight, live tonight, starting at 8/7 Central.
So far today, more than 2,000 flights across the U.S. have been delayed. Just over 100 have been canceled. That's all according to FlightAware.com. And it comes after the chaos last week left some travelers stranded for days. Bad weather and staffing issues have been to blame, and United Airlines is hoping to make amends with its most frustrated customers, offering 30,000 frequent flyer miles, and that is enough for a round-trip domestic ticket to many cities. Now, the company didn't say how many customers have been affected. And travel figures for the 4th of July weekend are breaking records. The TSA reporting nearly 11 million people have been screened from Thursday through Sunday, and more than 2.8 million people have passed through checkpoints on Friday alone. And that breaks the previous record for daily screenings, last set after Thanksgiving in 2019. And that number includes the hundreds of flight disruptions across the country. So travel demand is up. And so is the cost of airline tickets, especially in rural areas. Airlines have either been reducing or eliminating service to hundreds of airports outside of major U.S. cities. And that makes flying in and out of those areas more expensive. Scripps News correspondent Chris Conti shows us the efforts to bring major airlines back to those airports.
Regional airports in this country are lobbying federal lawmakers for support, trying to revamp some programs that keep smaller airports from being financially grounded. Okay, Datafly?
It'd be very bumpy today.
Yeah. There are few things in life Bob Burley knows better than flying. Where's your plane?
It's in a hangar. We'll get there.
The 80-year-old has been flying out of Morrisville Stowe Airport in Vermont since 2000. I mean, you could tell we're right in the mountains.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Nestled in the heart of the Green Mountains, tourists flock here year-round to ski and to explore. What kind of role does an airport like this play in a community of this size?
It provides access.
But right now, all flights in and out of this airport are essentially grounded. There is no place for any of these planes to refuel on site. Pilots hoping to fly out of here must come in with enough fuel to do so. As it stands right now, there's nowhere to get fuel here.
No, you have to bunker. We call it bunkering. You have to come in with enough fuel to get out, to get to where you're going to find fuel.
That's kind of crazy.
Next. I think it transcends mere craziness.
Morrisville once had one commercial flight a day to the New York City area. That went away in 2022.
And the opening ritual.
What's happening in Morrisville is part of a larger story playing out at regional airports nationwide. Service essentially vanishing into thin air.
Basically can carry 2 passengers.
And rural residents who depend on regional airports for commercial service are stuck in the middle. In a lot of smaller places, this is how you get around.
Precisely. eloquently said, it is a form of necessary transportation when you're far away from the urban centers.
Anyone flying into this region must travel through Burlington, an hour's drive away through the mountains. According to the Regional Airline Association, 324 airports have faced cuts since 2020. 14 of those airports have lost commercial service entirely.
It's a huge economic impact.
That is Richard Howell, executive director for a newly formed coalition called Restore Air Service. Restore stands for Restoring Essential Service to Our Rural Economies. The group represents airports that have lost daily air service since the pandemic, including Elmira, New York, Hagerstown, Maryland, Williamsport, Pennsylvania, Del Rio, Texas, Yakima, and Wenatchee, Washington. Many airlines have stopped service as federal funding has gone away, or they just don't see the routes as profitable.
We're looking to, to get together to be able to hit those influencers that can actually help us in achieving our goals and to bringing air service back into our community.
Restore's hope is to get the attention of congressional members during the ongoing FAA reauthorization process and get them to expand the Essential Air Service Program and Small Community Air Service Development Program. Both guarantee commercial flights to smaller communities.
What we found was no matter how hard we tried, there was nobody out there to be able to give us service, or that would be willing to start service.
While our industry contracted, small communities lost air service.
Earlier this year, the head of the Regional Airline Association addressed Congress on the issue, focusing largely on the role the current pilot shortage has on all of this, saying, quote, despite soaring passenger demand, a worsening pilot shortage has hindered the regional airline industry's recovery, decimating small community air service.
What is maybe the community losing out on with the airport not living up to its full potential?
The businesses in the community that were dependent on tourist traffic are seeing quite a downturn.
Back in Morrisville, with no fuel, there is no hope right now of commercial airline service arriving. For now, at regional airports like this one, the future of some flights here feel as uncertain as the wind. Chris Conti, Scripps News, Morrisville, Vermont.
Still to come on Scripps News Live, a man in Utah known as the runner guy with a sign now has a whole group with a sign behind him. The uplifting event he just hosted. That's next. And we want to remind you right here to follow us at Scripps News on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and on TikTok. We'll be right back.
Wounded Warrior Project has been with me every step of my journey.
Aaron, how you doing, bud? With experiences that help me realize that I'm not alone.
And specialized programs that give me the tools to train my body and mind.
Now, it's possible for me to get back out there.
To get out of my comfort zone and try new things.
To build and be part of a community that supports other warriors.
It's possible to get the help I need for me and my family.
I got my confidence back. I'm setting goals and I'm achieving them.
It's possible to feel understood, whether it's day one or 20 years down the road, they've got your back.
And as each warrior's needs evolve, Wounded Warrior Project is adapting to meet them.
Because when we pull together,
it's possible to go further than you ever imagined.
At Omaha Steaks, we do burgers differently. We take a premium aged steak like this and turn it into a pure ground burger like this. So this is actually a ribeye. This is a New York strip, top sirloin, beef brisket, and this is a filet mignon. For a limited time, our Burger Perfection flight comes with 20 big, juicy burgers, all for just $79.99, plus free shipping. Get it today at omahasteaks.com/TV. This is Burger Perfection, guaranteed.
Curious about trick plays and if ever
that local hero, national champ, now he's home and expected to save it. Hey guys, am I dreaming or can we actually win this thing?
Why didn't I try medication sooner? I guess I thought my anxiety would just go away. Hers changed everything. They connected me with a provider who got where I was coming from. Now, I finally feel like myself again. Get started today at forhers.com.
I kept seeing this shoe brand all over TikTok. It's called Kizik.
Look at this. Bam! Bam!
Look at that. These are absolutely amazing. The whole purpose behind this shoe is that it's completely hands-free.
Oh no!
They're so easy to get on.
No tying, no pulling, no heel crushing, no hands.
Kizik, they are no ordinary shoe.
Time to step up your shoe game and step into Kizik's. Get 15% off today at kizik.com/TV.
Sure, you'll teach her to drive a car, then use Greenlight and teach her to save up for her own car. Mowing lawns and getting paid. Navigate the world of earning, saving, and investing together. Invest in your best investment. Greenlight.
For over 100 years, this light has shined. A beacon of the free American press.
Reporting from Ukraine, Scripps News.
And now, this light shines even brighter. Scripps News.
Welcome back to Scripps News Live. A Utah man known as the Runner Guy with a sign is running hundreds of miles with a sign to spread joy to his neighbors. And along the way, he's inspiring people to bring a smile to others' faces. But now others have been joining in on his mission. Matili Gooby from Scripps News Salt Lake City shows us.
Lining the side of a road, holding signs.
If I saw somebody out running like this, it would resonate with me and I would really appreciate it.
To make strangers feel loved. It's a reminder on days where people might be thinking about giving up or just struggling just to get through whatever. And a simple message of I believe in you, reminder coming from somebody you don't know, sometimes it touches the heartstrings. And it all started with one man who has run hundreds of miles in Eagle Mountain holding the sign.
One day I was driving down the road and it was kind of early in the morning and I was having this terrible day.
And touching lives.
I looked up and there was this guy running with a sign that said, I believe in you. And all of a sudden I just started crying, like all of these tears, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, this was like such like a sweet thing.
Meet Ben Lynn.
I'm hoping it makes a difference in their lives.
Who started doing this a year and a half ago to bring positivity during the pandemic.
I joke around and tell people like, this is for me, this is selfish, because I get so much out of it. It just adds a whole other layer of purpose. And
to get more people involved, Ben hosted an event where people could make their own signs with messages of love and hold them up for strangers driving by.
And I think maybe it was something everybody needed for themselves, as well as to share it with other people.
Danny Shepard and his son Trip were part of that team. Else, and I think about these people as they're driving by, wonder what they're going through. And I hope that maybe one of our signs today, they read it and it impacted their day. For Danny, this has been a difficult year for his family, and seeing Ben running with his sign is a glimmer of hope. Lift it up for a time, because it is worth it, and you are loved, and I love you, whether I've met you or not.
My main goal is to uplift people, but also to share it.
And that was Matili Gooby reporting there for us. And now to Florida, where a woman has plenty of reasons to celebrate, at least 107 years worth. Lorraine King spends a bulk of her time now doing needlepoint, but it wasn't always this peaceful. She says that the doctor who delivered her way back in 1917 told her parents that she would survive less than a week due to a heart murmur.
The doctor said, don't bother to name her. She won't live 2 days, because he had a murmur. I still have a murmur every time the doctor checks it. So you can live with a murmur.
And not only that, King went on to climb 5 mountains in her lifetime and become one of the first Americans to ever own a television, and a whole lot more. Congratulations, Miss King. I'm Veronica Cruz. Thank you so much for joining us today. Sea life is fighting for its life off the California coast right now. Our Chris Stewart is up next. He's going to have details of the deadly red tide threatening animals. The news continues right here on Scripps News. And don't forget to check us out online as well. You can head over to scripsnews.com. And if you are staying with us, there's much more news headed your way. We'll be right back.
There's a new victim of identity theft every 3 seconds. And checking your credit score